Sin City, the entertainment capital of the United States, the desert dream, the neon oasis. People have always used the most beautiful words to describe Vegas. But come 2026, perhaps there's no more fitting name for this city than the city of ghosts and despair. Behind the multi-million-dollar LED signs and billion-dollar projects that haven't even recouped their costs, Las Vegas is experiencing a silent exodus. The casino is cutting staff. The resort is scaling down operations. The once crowded gaming floors are now only operating at a reduced capacity to save costs. And when cash flow slows down, the first thing to be sacrificed is always people. Hundreds of thousands of service workers, from dealers, room service attendants, security guards and technicians to logistics staff, are being pushed out of the system they have maintained for decades. Jobs that were once considered stable and well-paying have now disappeared after just one round of restructuring. Vegas in 2026 is no longer a story of luxury and indulgence. It is a warning about the cost of an economic model that is almost entirely dependent on gambling, tourism, and frivolous spending. A model that is collapsing just as the world enters an era of austerity. In today's video, we'll dissect why Sin City is rotting from within and why millions are paying the price for this fading dream. The past year was perhaps the most painful period for Vegas in recent memory. A descent into a nightmare that many say was even more terrifying than the COVID era or the 2009 crisis, because this time it wasn't a one-time shock, but a prolonged decline. Public figures are starting to speak out. Visitor volume to Las Vegas decreased by approximately 7.6% as of the end of October 2025, a significant enough drop to shake a city that thrives on volume. The danger lies in the fact that this is not a one-month or one-season drop, but a prolonged trend. Harry Reid International Airport saw consecutive declines in passenger numbers. October 2025 saw an 8.2% decrease compared to the same period last year, and November saw a 9.6% decrease, marking the 10th consecutive month of decline. This shows that the slowdown is not a subjective feeling, but the real movement of the flow of people. The shock is even more evident in the international market. The flow of tourists from Canada, one of the most loyal and high-return sources of visitors, has declined sharply. Data shows that the number of Canadians traveling to the US has decreased by up to 23%, leading to a sharp decline in flights to Vegas. This is particularly dangerous because Vegas can't survive solely on seasonal, trendy high rollers who come and go. This city needs regular visitors, and that's the very group that's pulling back. However, the paradox lies in the fact that despite the decrease in the number of tourists, prices have not cooled down. Occupancy remains around 80.8%, but the average room rate is still about $195 per night. Adding to this is the fee economy ecosystem. Resort fees, parking fees, service charges, along with increasingly less attractive comps and discounts, making a trip to Vegas a real financial burden. From dining and lodging to entertainment and gambling, what used to be a self-rewarding weekend trip has now turned into a hefty bill. Travel is no longer a habit, it has become a luxury. Meanwhile, American consumers are tightening their spending not necessarily because they are tired of Vegas, but because they no longer have any spare money. Perhaps we misunderstood when we said Vegas lost its magic. The magic is still there. It's just that Americans are struggling with the basic cost of survival and can no longer afford that miracle. The consequences directly impact the labor market. Tourism accounts for approximately 22.6% of the workforce in Las Vegas and southern Nevada, meaning that for every 5 people employed, more than one person lives directly from tourism. If you include the ripple effect, nearly 1/3 of the labor economy depends on tourist revenue. Therefore, when business slows down, the first thing to be cut isn't the neon lights, but over time, night shifts, tips, and working hours, the living wage that service workers rely on to survive. To best feel the impact of 2025, You don't need to see if the casino closes or not. Look at restaurants shortening their hours, shows closing early, empty bars, and behind them, workers quietly being pushed off the schedule. 2025 is therefore the year of a cold truth. The city may still be making money, but workers are living more miserably than ever. The past of Vegas was built on a very simple belief. The house always wins, tourists always come back, and jobs in this industry are always stable. But 2025 shows that even things that seem eternal have limits. Vegas is now like a canary in a coal mine, an early indicator of the health of American discretionary spending. When Vegas slows down, it might not just be the story of a city, but a sign that Americans are tightening their belts on a large scale. Vegas is not just a tourist destination, it is the thermometer of the American pocketbook and the worry of workers. In Las Vegas, mass layoffs rarely begin with a press release. It started with a very small, very ordinary sentence. There are no shifts for you this week. Not noisy, no headline. But for service workers, that's the first sign of a storm. If we look back at previous recession cycles, we can see that job losses in Vegas always occur in waves, increasing over time. The first layer is almost invisible, cutting hours, reducing shifts, reducing overtime. Tip income fell first, even the nominal wages remained the same. Workers still have jobs, but they no longer have enough money to live on. The second layer is a hiring freeze. People who leave are not replaced, and the workload falls on those who remain. And only when all soft cuts are insufficient does Vegas move to the third layer. Local layoffs, show closures, restaurant closures, and the shutdown of individual operational areas. By this point, the system had lost a significant amount of blood. 2026 is considered particularly sensitive due to Vegas's economic structure. This city is heavily reliant on leisure and hospitality, industries that react almost instantly to fluctuations in demand. Just a few percentage points decrease in demand forced businesses to adjust their staffing. Recent labor figures show Las Vegas area unemployment at approximately 5.6% in August 2025, reflecting a labor market with little safety net as tourism slows. What makes job loss in Vegas much more dangerous than in many other places lies in the psychological factor and the social chain. Missing a shift isn't just about losing income. This led to late rent payments, credit card debt, being forced to leave the profession and then leaving the city. For many, it's a slow but very difficult downward spiral. This is why when we say millions of people lost their jobs, the story isn't just about those who were officially laid off, but also a whole host of people who were indirectly affected by reduced hours and declining income throughout the entire service ecosystem. Of course, there is critical data that needs to be acknowledged. In some months, gaming revenue on the Strip remained stable or even increased slightly. But this is precisely the point that is easily misunderstood. Jobs in Vegas don't rely solely on gaming revenue. It survives on spending outside the casino, food and drink, entertainment, shopping, shows. When these funds are cut, jobs still disappear, even before the financial statements turn red. Therefore, the job loss picture of 2026 doesn't resemble a major crash, but rather a behind-the-scenes process of unemployment. The Strip might still look normal, but behind the scenes, the schedule is thinning out. And that's when the most important question arises. If unemployment manifests as reduced hours and attrition, who will be overlooked in the statistics? Vegas isn't just getting more expensive. It's getting more expensive in a much more dangerous way, making people feel like they're being charged just to exist. And in the consumer world, nothing kills trust faster than that feeling. The fee economy system has turned the Vegas experience into a chain of surcharges, resort fees, parking fees, service charges, and then other small but not insignificant expenses. For many tourists, this is no longer just about money, but the feeling of being tricked into a game where the rules are only revealed after you've already walked through the door. The most common reaction isn't loud anger, it's silent withdrawal. This becomes even clearer when placed in the new context of consumer behaviour. Despite the decrease in tourist numbers, the average room price remains around $195 per night. In those circumstances, Americans didn't necessarily give up on travel. They just changed the destination. When the price doesn't reflect the value, the most reasonable choice is to go elsewhere, somewhere closer, cheaper, and where you feel less like you're being ripped off. The tourist limb-cutting order was also very cold. They didn't cut the first trip. They cut the show, then went to the bar, then ate at the resort, then shopped, then tipped. And it's these amounts that feed most of the jobs outside the casino floor. So, when consumers are on the defensive, the consequences aren't at the roulette table. They're in the restaurants, theatres, bars, and on the schedule boards. And here's the scariest part. When the middle class retreats, Vegas doesn't respond by lowering prices. Vegas is changing its model. That was the moment when collapse truly began. Not by losing customers, but by reselecting them. If a city makes tourists remember bills more than memories, what is it selling in the end? And if expensive becomes a long-term strategy, who will be eliminated from the game? The answer leads directly to the next phase of Vegas, a two-story city. Perhaps Vegas won't collapse in the sense of no more customers. It collapsed in the sense of changing the welcomed object. Instead of trying to keep the masses, this city is leaning toward a different logic. Fewer tourists, but each spends more. The two-tier Vegas model is gradually becoming clear. Luxury branding, high-end dining, and premium experiences are being pushed to the forefront. Meanwhile, the deals that once attracted the general public have been reduced or disappeared. On paper, this is a strategy to optimize revenue per customer. But in real life, it creates a huge job gap. The reason is very simple. Whales can maintain gaming revenue, but they can't maintain labor volume. Super-rich guests do not generate the same level of demand for housekeeping, servers, retail, show crews, or vendors as millions of ordinary tourists. When the model favors a small group, low-level jobs become redundant. Market figures reinforce this logic. Tourism decreased by approximately 7.6% year-on-year, while prices remained high. This shows that Vegas is willing to accept a decrease in volume to maintain revenue per customer. The renovations and rebrands mentioned in the transcripts are not just cosmetic. They are implicit statements about who is served and who is no longer a priority. The downside of this choice is starting to impact the lives of residents. The LVCVA's approval of a $20 million grant for F1 in the 2026-2027 period is seen by many as a symbol of spectacle economics. Prioritizing global image, while the cost of living for residents becomes increasingly burdensome. This isn't just a budget dispute. It's a story about faith and belonging. Of course, it's fair to acknowledge one thing. Major events like F1 can bring new promotion and visitor traffic. But the key questions remain. How much of the benefits actually translates into sustainable jobs and who ultimately benefits? Can a city survive if it only likes one group of visitors? And when experience becomes a privilege, what does society lose beside tourism? To operate such a profit-optimized Vegas, there's one more piece of the puzzle accelerating, colder, more efficient, and more dangerous to jobs: automation. If the fee economy takes money directly from tourists' wallets, automation takes away something much more intangible: the time and future of workers. It's not noisy, doesn't cause immediate outrage, but it's persistent and very difficult to reverse. Entering 2026, this trend is becoming increasingly evident. Self-check-in, QR ordering, kiosks, fewer hosts, fewer frontline staff, all justified by two familiar words: optimization. On paper, automation helps reduce payroll costs, standardize experiences, and limit human resource risks. But in a city that thrives on emotion like Vegas, the price isn't on the balance sheet. The mechanism of this vortex is very cold. When service becomes cold, customers are less likely to return. When fewer customers return, demand decreases. When demand decreases, businesses have even more reason to lay off employees and automate further. Each iteration makes the experience poorer and the work more precarious. This isn't an immediate crash, but a process of erosion. This directly affects the tourist's own perceptions. Many people don't complain about waiting a long time or cumbersome operations. They complain because Vegas no longer felt kind. As that emotion builds up, it quickly translates into behavior. Going out less, staying shorter, spending less. And once again, the consequences are not on the casino floor, but in the jobs behind it. Labor data tracked by the BLS in the Las Vegas Paradise MSA show that this market fluctuates strongly with the tourism cycle. This makes any soft-cut strategy quickly turn into a job crisis if demand doesn't recover. The 69-day strike involving approximately 700 workers at Virgin Hotels is a very real slice of this conflict. It's not just a wage dispute. It reflects the tug-of-war between rising labor costs, optimization pressures, and the increasingly strong trend toward automation. As labor, insurance, and healthcare standards at the federal and state levels continue to put cost pressure on businesses, they have an even greater incentive to replace humans with systems. The solution, if any, does not lie in turning away from technology. It lies in the question, is Vegas willing to reinvest in human services? Because ultimately, it's the experience, not the process, that keeps customers coming back in the long run. When humans are replaced by screens, does an entertainment city still sell experiences or just processes? And is today's cost savings quietly becoming tomorrow's lost customers? There's one factor that makes cutting hours more dangerous than ever before. The cost of living isn't cutting back. By the end of 2025, the median home price in southern Nevada is projected to reach approximately $488,995, a record high. What's shocking isn't just the numbers, but the accompanying paradox. Inventory is increasing, yet prices are still soaring. The market isn't reacting like a normal cycle, and it is this distortion that creates long-term pressure on those who live on service income and tips. In a tip-based economy, missing a few shifts isn't just about losing pocket money. It can quickly lead to late rent payments, late loan payments, and difficult survival decisions. Instability, therefore, spreads very quickly, very deeply, and often doesn't give people enough time to cope. Social consequences began to appear in a chain. Workers have to travel further to live, leave their jobs sooner, or move to another state. As service forces thin out, the quality of the travel experience declines. As the experience declines, demand decreases further. A dangerous feedback loop formed, not due to lack of investment, but because of an inability to retain people. Vegas once had a clear advantage over expensive areas like California or Los Angeles, a more affordable cost of living. But as Vegas also became expensive, that advantage disappeared. The flow of labor that once poured into this area is starting to slow down and even reverse. In that context, major projects and financial pressures in the entertainment and gaming industries, such as the debate surrounding corporate debt and financing capabilities, further reinforce the public sense that the city is placing a large bet on its image's future, while working life is tightening day by day. This isn't just a business story, it's a story about priorities. As housing prices peaked and jobs became precarious, perhaps the first thing to collapse wasn't casinos, but the ability of workers to stay in Vegas. Can a tourist city exist if the people who make it cannot live in it? And with the cost of living rising and work hours decreasing, who will be the first to leave? When people start leaving, the domino effect won't stop at housing. It's spread throughout the entire local economy. Casinos have never existed in isolation. Behind every gaming table lies a vast ecosystem. Food, logistics, transportation, maintenance, security, show production, medical services, and technology. And when the casino shrinks, even just a little, the whole city shrinks with it. This is not a metaphor. This is the operating mechanism. The domino effect in 2026 could be very clear. When visitor numbers decline and spending is tightened, F&B and shows are the first areas to suffer. Decreased revenue led to the cancellation of contracts with vendors. When the vendor loses the contract, overtime disappears. As overtime disappears, layoffs are spreading beyond the Strip, to jobs that visitors never see, but are essential to the city. At a deeper level, the supply chain begins to feel the pressure. The F&B industry in Vegas heavily relies on the logistics chain and suppliers who adhere to FDA and USDA food safety standards. When input costs rise, businesses are caught between a rock and a hard place, maintain safety standards or cut costs to survive. In such phases, operational and quality risks don't need anyone to intentionally cause them. They naturally increase with system pressure. And then, confidence shocks began to appear, exactly what the public was most worried about. The MGM data breach and the $45 million settlement, with the data of tens of millions of customers exposed, left a deep scar. As the FTC continues to investigate the handling of the 2023 incident, the underlying message to travelers is clear. Even vacations can carry risks. In a city that thrives on trust and a sense of security, this is a scandal that won't be easily healed. At the same time, the controversy surrounding the $0 million in public funding for F1 in 2026-2027 further deepened a sensitive question. Is public money prioritizing spectacle over livelihoods? For many residents, this is no longer a story of sports or global promotion, but rather the feeling that the city is investing in the spotlight. While behind the scenes, there's a lack of oxygen. Another dark corner comes from the future of infrastructure. Nevada OSHA, fining the Boring Company over $12,000 for safety violations at the Vegas Loop, made the public realize that even tomorrow's projects come with a very real labor cost today. These projects can create short-term construction jobs that needs to be acknowledged. But the harder question remains, how many sustainable jobs were created after the opening lights went out? All of this combines to create a debatable picture. When maximizing profits becomes the central philosophy, risk doesn't disappear. It's simply transferred to someone else. The problem is, who is that risk being transferred to? Tourists, workers, or the local community? If this story resonates with your experience, whether in Vegas or wherever you live, please leave a comment. Perhaps we're not just seeing Vegas, but a repeating pattern in many other cities. Las Vegas has never lacked money to build something new, but the question of 2026 will probably not lie in the number of projects or the brightness of neon lights. It lies in something more intangible, whether there are enough people left to run this city, because a city doesn't collapse when casinos close. It collapsed when the people who worked here started leaving, not because they wanted to, but because they couldn't survive. In many public reports, tourism decreased in 2025. But what's scary isn't the decline. What's scary is the system's response. Increased fees, service cuts, automation, and pushing risk down to lower levels. Vegas can still look okay on the surface. But if it's just a place optimized for profit, then maybe it's not Vegas anymore. It's just a machine. And machines have no memory. If Vegas 2026 is still dazzling but lacks the people who made it, do you call that a revival or just makeup for decline? Do you think the future of Vegas is a real decline or a restructuring that will make the city no longer accessible to the masses? Whether you believe Vegas will recover or continue to decline, the choice is still yours and your wallet's. If you find this analysis helpful, please click like to help the video reach a wider audience. Share if you think the Vegas story is not just about Vegas, but a model that might be happening where you live. And if you want these types of investigative analysis videos every week, subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next episode. This video was created for analysis and commentary based on public sources, statistical reports, and media coverage available at the time of production. Some information is predictive and presented with cautious language such as "it seems," "perhaps," according to some sources, as economic trends can change over time. This video does not constitute financial, legal, or investment advice and is not intended to attack any individual, business, or community. If you have additional sources or personal experiences, please share them in the comments section to make the discussion more comprehensive and balanced.